Another member of the White House economic team has announced she is leaving Washington. Good evening. I'm Liz Cheney, in tonight for Sean Hannity. The chair of the President's Council of Economic Advisors, Christina Romer, revealed late last night that her last day with the administration will be September 3rd. News of her departure broke just 1 week after Peter Orszag stepped down as head of the Office of Management and Budget. The shakeup at the White House comes as the nation received even more bad economic news today. In July, 131,000 jobs were lost, and the unemployment rate remained unchanged at 9.5%. You may remember that it was Christina Romer who infamously predicted in January of 2009 that if the Recovery Act passed, unemployment would not go above 8%. Joining me now with more on all of this is Wyoming Senator John Barrasso. Senator, welcome.
Thank you, Liz.
It's wonderful to have you here, and I think I can say, Senator, really it's not disputable that Wyoming is in fact the greatest state in the Union. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely, and I'm looking forward to be there later tonight.
Good, good. Well, listen, I think that we've also seen a lot of Wyoming values, things like self-reliance, the importance of a small government, really individualism, a belief in individual freedoms, values that it seems to me in the last 18 months or so of this administration, people all across this country are coming to understand and agree even more with Wyoming on those.
Well, in Wyoming, as you know, families need to live within their means, and the state of Wyoming lives within its means. It balances its budget every year. And Washington needs to take a lesson from Wyoming. You know, I think that Washington has gotten too fat, it's gotten flabby, it's gotten slow, and we need to put Washington on a diet and get Washington back to living within its means. We have a $13 trillion debt right now. The spending, to me, is unsustainable, it's irresponsible, and a lot of people around the country are worried that it may even be irreversible.
And we had a new set of numbers out today, Senator, that showed that we've now lost, since the stimulus plan was passed, more than 3.3 million jobs. Maybe that's how the Democrats in Washington view a recovery, but it doesn't seem to feel like a recovery to folks much outside the Beltway. What's your sense of whether the Democrats in Washington, the leadership in Congress, will start to listen to the American people on these issues?
Well, they sure haven't listened on so many issues, including health care. But people around the country, and at my town hall visits with people in Wyoming, they're focused on jobs, the economy, the debt, and the spending. The problem isn't that we're taxed too little, it's that we spend too much. You know, Christina Romer leaving right now, you think about that, they really overpromised and under-delivered. The president gave a speech not that long ago. He said, "Is America on the right track?" And then he said, "Yes, it is." Well, only 1 in 3 Americans believe him and agree with him. And then Joe Biden has said that the stimulus actually has worked better than they expected. Well, only 1 in 4 Americans believe him. So, you know, it sounds to me like they are really out of touch with the American people, Liz.
Do you think, Senator, one of the reasons for that might be that the president has no economic advisors around him who've got any experience in the business world?
Well, you look at it and they have academic credentials. Maybe they can tell us what ought to work, but they don't know what does work. Larry Summers is still there in the White House. He was president of Harvard. You have Tim Geithner still there as Treasury Secretary. But even Christina Romer and Peter Orszag, you know, there isn't really that practical experience of having to meet a payroll, having to live with government regulations. And these rules and regulations and red tape that small business owners have to deal with, Liz, they're very difficult. And that's why I think people aren't hiring right now. There's so much uncertainty. You know, in the past, business people would think about, okay, what is going to happen with the market? Now people are much more worried about what's going to happen with government. What's government going to do to them? And, you know, the president not that long ago had a summit at the White House, and he brought in business leaders and said, "Why aren't you hiring?" And they ticked off a number of reasons. And they said, well, it's increasing taxes. It's the responsibility that we may have to pay for all this increased health care. It's the issue of energy costs if they do these mandates with the Environmental Protection Agency on carbon regulation. It's the union, the voting, so that the union members for union shops, they'll lose an opportunity to have a closed ballot, a secret ballot. Well, those are the things that are the president's agenda. And that's what the president said, "Why aren't you hiring?" Well, Mr. President, it's because of the agenda that you have for the American people.
You know, and as we watched, Senator, and we saw recently the footage out of Greece, for example, a country that is not able to meet its obligations, a country that's got a bloated bureaucracy, a country the IMF has had to go into and tell them that they've got to, in fact, shrink their public sector. They have to, in fact, look for ways that they can privatize more of their health care system. As all of us in America were watching that, I've been increasingly struck by the extent to which this administration seems not too concerned about that model, that they watch that example and continue to drive us potentially off of a very dangerous cliff.
Well, I think it is a very dangerous cliff. And when the president met with the Republican senators, I told him that this debt that we have, Greece may actually just be a coming attraction to what's going to happen in America. We have to put this government, put Washington on a diet. This amount of spending really is unsustainable. And, I believe in American exceptionalism. I don't want a European economy or a European approach for this country. I believe in, opportunities for Americans, equality of opportunities, not equality of outcomes or of results. So, those things matter deeply to me and to the American people. To me, it's about freedom and liberty and opportunity. And to do that, we need to get the spending under control. We need to be much more responsible and accountable. And this government isn't doing it right now, Liz. And look at this. The House of Representatives is coming back next week to pass another spending bill that is not paid for. They're going to add this to the incredible deficit and debt that we have right now.
Senator, I don't want to let you go tonight without touching on the topic of health care, because it's something in which you clearly are such a tremendous expert. We had just this week a vote in Missouri where the people said resoundingly, over 70% of them, we do not want the mandatory insurance part of the health care reform bill. What's your sense of the prospects this fall for us to be able to hopefully elect more Republicans and be able to move towards potentially repealing this very damaging legislation?
This health care law is bad for patients. It's bad for providers, the nurses and the doctors. It's bad for payers, people paying their health bills, and the taxpayers. We need to replace it after we repeal it. And what's happened is in Missouri, this is the show me state, and they've showed Washington that they really care about this. 21 states are now suing the federal government about this mandate. I think it's unconstitutional. It's likely to get to the Supreme Court. But, this Congress did not listen to the American people. This was passed, this health care law was passed with people yelling and screaming, do not force this down our throats. We don't want this. And the president and others said, well, it'll become popular once you know what's in it. Well, Liz, as more and more people have found out what's in it, it's become even more unpopular. Right now, 58% of Americans are opposed to this health care law, and it's something that I believe is going to impact on the elections in November. We're going to have to make a change in this country, and if the election were held today, Liz, I believe it would be a very good day for Republicans.
Good. Well, I hope you're right, Senator. I look forward to seeing you out in Wyoming in just a few days. Thank you very much for being with us here tonight.
Thanks for having me, Liz.